Good evening, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 7th, 2007 meeting of the Glendale City Council. May we have the roll call, please?
Council members Draymond.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Yusefian.
Here.
Mayor Najarian.
Here. Councilman Weaver, will you lead us in the flag salute this evening?
Please join with me in the flag salute. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the invocation. A few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to go to Project Achieve and make breakfast for the individuals in that program, and was accompanied by individuals who are making a strong effort to help these individuals stand up on their own. It was a marvelous experience which illuminates the soul. I want to dedicate tonight's invocation to the volunteers in our community who give freely of their own free time to make such programs a success. President George Herbert Walker Bush once said during a speech that a volunteer is a member who can see what others cannot see, who can feel what most do not feel. Often such gifted persons do not think of themselves as volunteers, but as citizens. Citizens in the fullest sense, partners in civilization. Let us pray for those who give freely of their time in our city to help the many causes that reach the many people who need our assistance. Let us pray for their health and longevity and pray that we may be inspired by their example to do more ourselves, because even though we cannot do all the good that the world needs, the world does need all the good that we can do. Amen.
May we have your report, Mr. Kasaki?
The agenda for the August 7, 2007 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on Thursday, August 2nd, 2007 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. And before we get to item 3, I would like to announce the passing of a local resident in whose name we will adjourn our meeting this evening. Glendale resident Erwin Krikorian, father of Assembly member Paul Krikorian, passed away Sunday night at the age of 83. He was a member of the greatest generation. Mr. Erwin Krikorian served honorably in the United States Marine Corps and bravely fought in the Pacific Theater, including the Battle of Okinawa. He leaves behind 2 daughters, 2 sons, and 6 grandchildren. Our condolences to the Krikorian family. The next item, please.
At 3 is presentation and appointments, and at 3A is agenda preview for the meeting of August 14, 2007, presented by Robert McFall, Assistant City Manager.
Mr. McFall.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of council. For next week, we'll be continuing the discussion of the capital improvement program in a special meeting at 9:30 in the morning. The Glendale Housing Authority and Redevelopment Agency do not have any specific action items. There is a special meeting a joint special meeting between the City of Glendale and the Glendale Unified School District that will be held at the District Board of Education, and a number of topics are included on the agenda for council to discuss.
What time?
That is starting at 3 p.m. August 14th. This is for August 14th's agenda. On the City Council agenda, there are a couple of action items. The City Treasurer will be presenting the city's annual investment report, and the City Treasurer will also be presenting for council consideration the investment policy for fiscal year 2007-2008. And then lastly, there will be a hearing conducted by the Director of Planning on a appeals case for a property located at 118 Carr Drive. That would be it.
Thank you. Next item, please.
At 3B is proclamation designating August 10, 2007 as Art Day.
And let's see, is Becky Mate in the audience?
I'm not Becky.
Didn't think so.
And you're here to take her place.
Yes, I'm Richard Espinoza. I work with the arts. I'm a staff person with the Arts and Culture Commission, and I was expecting to meet Betty here. I'm Becky here today for the proclamation, but I guess she hasn't made it yet. So,
well, I do have a proclamation for Art Day. I will ask Mr. Draymond, Councilman Draymond, to hand it to you. Let me read the proclamation, and you certainly can add anything at the end of it. Whereas, since 1998, the second Friday in August has been dedicated to the arts. Artists of all disciplines have been celebrated at festivals, libraries, art gift giving, families doing art together, and greeting card exchanges in Glendale and at locations in North and South America, Europe, and Asia. Did we do this last week? Something similar. Whereas art uplifts the people of the world, whether through paintings, plays, poems, stories, or songs, all nations benefit by celebrating and supporting the boundless creativity of artists. And whereas Art Day is a day for helping artists all over the world by purchasing their work or just letting them know you appreciate what they do, and whereas the arts play a vital role in the creation and enhancement of culture, and Art Day symbolizes a milestone in the validation and recognition of the arts in the city of Glendale, setting a great example for other cities to follow. And whereas Glendale is the home of Art Day, a holiday dedicated to scientific advancements, enlightenments, knowledge, creativity, imagination, cultural interchanges, and dreams that come from cultures rich in the arts. Now therefore I, Aaron Najarian, Mayor of the City of Glendale, hereby proclaim Friday, August 10th, 2007, as Art Day, and encourage everyone to explore the holiday in a way that celebrates the artists who have made the most impact on them.
Well, I'll shake your hand
Okay.
in lieu of Betty and accept
Or
that
Becky?
for her.
Becky?
Pardon me, and you can say a few words.
I know that.
Oh,
Becky, why don't you
come
on
forward.
up? I'm going to let actually Becky talk a little bit about Art Day because she's the one who's spearheading and coordinating many of the events that are happening on that day and that weekend. Becky?
Yes, indeed. You don't have to go away.
No, I'm ready.
Okay. Yeah, Art Day.
We got
Sorry.
you out of breath there.
I rode my bike over fast. Yeah, as well as raising appreciation for the role of the artist in society and increasing funding to the arts. What has been happening that I've noticed since last year when Dave Weaver was mayor and proclaimed Art Day, it's sort of snowballing, and arts groups are getting in touch with each other, they're coordinating, more is happening. For instance, at the Galleria, we're having several arts groups. The Businessman's Art Institute is having a paint out on Saturday, the day after Art Day. They're painting a model, and then there's art displays from the Glendale Art Association, Verdugo Hills Arts Association, the Atanian Art Center, the Express Art Center, and there's activities for the kids, and there's a Art Day raffle, and that's sponsored by the Galleria, the City of Glendale Arts and Culture Commission, Newcastle Remodeling, Mission Renaissance, Fast Frame of Glendale. Mission Renaissance is donating a full month of classes. Fast Frame is donating discounts on their services. Atanian Art Center is donating teaching of art. Swain's Art Supplies is donating $50 worth of art supplies. Plus there's a whole basket full of art, and it's a free raffle. So this is good for the residents of the city. And as well, it's an official holiday because it has greeting cards now. The first mass-produced ones this year. And I'll let each of you take one.
And it all started in Glendale? Is that?
All started in Glendale, that's
I remember,
right.
About this last year as well.
Yeah. So I think I'm missing something. Oh, here it is. I wanted to invite all of you to my art and chocolate party to celebrate Art Day. So here are some Art Day cards. Pass around to them.
What kind of party?
Art and chocolate.
Okay. Look at the art and we eat the chocolate.
Yeah. And people bring,
And where is that going to be?
a poem. I live in an apartment building, and there's this big garden with this big shady tree. So on Art Day, people go back there and
Thank you.
recite a poem or hear a story or look at the art. It's very informal. We have a chocolate fountain. It has milk chocolate on one side and dark chocolate coming down the other side. So,
That's free of charge?
yeah,
Wonderful.
it's a party. Anybody can come. They can contact me at Art Day at earthlink.net if they want to know about it. It's for the community, basically. The
Okay.
party is, and so is the thing at the Galleria.
Okay. So if they want more information, contact you at artday
At earthlink.net.
earthlink.net. Very good. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, and thank
you
you
very
so much
much.
for the proclamation. This is fantastic.
Our pleasure. The next item, please.
At 3C, a selection of nominating panel for Design Review Board Number 1 to replace or reappoint Mr. Vartan Varpetian, whose term expires October 23, 2007. This is Councilmember Chair Quintero and Councilmember Yusefian are the panelists.
That's great. Next item.
City Council or staff comments?
Comments from council? Mr. Weaver?
Something I'd like to put on the agenda.
Yes.
Put on the agenda discussion of moving oral communications into a different location on the agenda.
Okay. Thank you. I think we'd like to discuss that, as well as let members of the public give us their opinions as well. Anything else from my colleagues? And along those lines, I would like to remind everyone that I am currently performing a work in progress on the oral communications segment of the meeting. As I did last week, I will be offering the speakers who wish to address us during oral communications the option to get priority in return for a volunteering to limit their speech to 3 minutes. That will guarantee you to be at the very front of the oral communications agenda. The remaining speakers who do not request priority or limit themselves to the 3 minutes will have 5 minutes. However, those cards will be randomly drawn, and we will continue oral communications until approximately expiration of 60 minutes from the initial start, at which time I will be advancing the business items of the City Council to be heard. When, upon the completion of the action items and public hearings, we will then resume the balance of the oral communication speakers. This is a work in progress. We will be placing it on the agenda, as Mr. Councilman Weaver has requested, and you're certainly free to address the issue at that time, or if you choose not to wait, you're certainly free to contact me by email to let me know how you feel about that. We're trying to balance the rights of the public to address the council with the rights of those folks who are here on city business to have their items heard in a timely fashion and not drag on too late into the evening. Where this will end, we don't know, and we encourage your input along the way. Thank you. So if there's anyone who wishes to address council on oral communications who has not submitted a card, you basically get a choice. Do you want the early show and limit to 3 minutes, or would you like to take your chances and be bumped after the city business is done with a 5-minute speaking time limit? And if you would indicate on your cards when you present them to the clerk, we'll try and arrange this in the best manner. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next item. If there are no other staff comments, we'll move on to item 5. And I do have a card requesting item 5C be pulled. That will be taken separately, which leaves items 5A and 5B.
Move 5A and B.
Second. Yeah. Mr. Mayor and Council, at 5 is the consent items, including minutes. The following are routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before a motion is proposed. Which one would you like me to read into the record, or would you like to take?
I'll move 5A and B and get it out of the way.
Second.
Okay, motion and second
Or 5A
Roll
and
call,
B.
please. 5A and B.
Council members Draymond,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Yusefian,
Aye.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes. 5C, please.
5C is Director of Human Resources regarding Horizon Health contract renewal. Motion renewing Employee Assistance Program, EAP, contract for 1 year, May 1, 2007 to April 30, 2008.
The speaker request is by Dr. Richard Espiritu.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, City Council, and staff. I am Dr. Richard Espiritu. About 3.5 years ago, Mr. Mayor, you asked me to comment on health issues. When I was reading this report, it piqued my interest with a very leading statement that this leads credence to this program. This is basically a program to assist employees or their dependents for mental problems, alcohol, drug issues, family-related issues such as spousal or child abuse. There are 2,180 employees covered under this program at $2.46. The average family size is 2.5. 2.5 brings it to a total of 5,363 covered individuals. And your average at $2.46 is about $64,353. It's very interesting because now, because you're averaging 5 visits per year, it comes out to $2.39 per visit. This raised several questions. Under Exhibit D, the insurance requires, and this is Section 4.3 on page 22, self-insurance retention must not exceed $1,000. Why is this such a little amount, considering retention issues are related to the premiums, loss ratios, and utilization, which usually run with major insurance companies between 150 to 200%. Is this a duplication of services for our self-insured and fully insured plans, or the HMO that we have? The other question, does human resources or the department heads, are they informed of any employees with substance abuse problems, child or spousal abuse problems? The other question this raises is, why does a medical provider providing services that cost them money, there is no deductible and no copayment, is it because they're tapping into the self-insured plans and the fully insured plans? And if you have a chance, look at on page, under check the exclusions, on page 17 and 18 of everything that's excluded. Everything excluded. Prescription, inpatient, psychiatric services. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Weaver,
Move 5C.
Second.
with no further discussion, roll call, please.
Council members Draymond,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Yusefian.
No.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes. The next item?
6 is oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Members, council may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The city manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for investigation and report.
Okay, very well. And I hope everyone heard my previous explanation of how we're going to attempt oral communications this week, much like last week. It is 6:25 for all intents and purposes. We will terminate oral communications and interrupt oral communications and take the city's business at approximately 7:25, or until we run out of cards. Mark Baer, 3 minutes.
Mayor, City Councilman,
I'm here again on the oral communications issue, and thank you so much for putting it on the agenda. Councilman Yusefian, last time when I finished speaking, you brought up the First Amendment, and the only thing I want to say to that as far as the law is concerned, being a lawyer, the First Amendment merely means that when you're on public property, which this is, that you have the right to speak regardless of whether people like what you have to say. You can have them speak at the end of the agenda. You can have them speak for 1 minute. You're still allowing free speech. And I told you when I was here last time that I was going to have my secretary do some research, so I have. And in fact, 5 minutes per person for oral communications is very rare. In fact, there is no city that I know of that gives so much time. Most of them give 1 to 3 minutes, and most are 1, and they're held to the end of the calendar. I'd gladly go over with you, if any of you care to know, which cities I've looked at so far and which allow 1 minute, 3 minutes, etc., because I've done it, and I'm going to have further research done before I come back again. And apparently, although I have better things to do than come to city councilmen, but apparently I'm becoming a regular here and an activist. I'm going to ask everybody who watches this council meeting on television to give their support to this because it's ridiculous. I have come here 2 times to speak on agenda items, and I have never been heard on an agenda item because I have left before it was heard because of oral communications. Apparently, after having come here and made my statement last week, apparently Carl Raggio, who has been a councilman and a former mayor, wrote an article for the Glendale News Press, basically restating exactly what I've said. And it's not just limited to 5 minutes, because apparently there's a councilman who all of us know, and it's easy to figure out because I've only been here a few times, who has to comment on everything, and it takes longer than 5 minutes as a result. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Draymond, and for the public, the clock stops when council members make a comment. So our running 60-minute time is stopped while my colleagues make a comment. Mr. Draymond.
Okay. Didn't mean to stop the
No.
clock. I have a question for Mr. Bayer. Actually, a couple, if you wouldn't mind. I am interested in knowing which cities and which were 1 minute cities and which were 3. And I recall some years ago, maybe not years ago, but some time ago, I remember being in the audience when Mr. Then Mayor Weaver, I believe, I think you were mayor at the time, I can't recall. Anyway, did something similar. I would be interested in knowing.
All right, well,
if the list is too long to
no, there's only
there's
only a few that we've done so far. Beverly Hills has 3 minutes, and they are heard before agenda items, but it depends how many are being heard, and it's up to the mayor's discretion how long the meeting is to take place. But again, it's 3 minutes. Long Beach is again, they allow only 10 people per meeting to give oral communications, the first 10 who submit it. Talk about free speech. You guys sit here all night long if you get enough people that submit it. 10 people. And depending upon how many people come, they're limited to 3 minutes always, and some are heard before agenda items and some are heard at the end of the meeting. Beverly Hills allows 20 minutes of, West Hollywood allows only 2 minutes per person. You allow 5 unless they ask for priority. And 2 minutes per person, they give a total of 20 minutes pre-agenda item. And if anybody can't fit within that, they're held over to the end of the calendar. Santa Monica, people can ask for priority requesting to fill in either 1, 2, or 3 minutes. Of course, the people who speak for 1 minute are called first. And the city councilmen determine how long the meeting should go, so they have a cutoff time. And depending upon how late the meeting is running close to the cutoff time,
no matter how long each speaker is asked to speak, if they're put to the end of the calendar, which they all are in Santa Monica, they are all limited to 1 minute if there's too many people for oral communications. And by the way, this is different than the 5 minutes that they should be here to speak on agenda items.
Thank you. And the other thing I wanted to say is just a comment to you, Mr. Fair. And please don't take this as an insult, because it isn't meant that way. I appreciate the time you take to come here. I just want you to know, and I frankly don't know how often prior to your last visit that prompted all of this, how often you do drop by or tune in to see these proceedings. But believe me, this is not an issue that has gone unnoticed or untouched. I've been out there many, many times over the years and watched these gentlemen and some of their predecessors try to cope with this issue. I don't take it lightly. I know my colleagues don't either. Believe me, it's not easy to sit up here till sometimes 2 in the morning doing this. So I do appreciate what you're saying.
I understand, but it is a...
I'm just trying to let you know that it isn't a matter of trying to insult you or hurt you or make you angry. Also, you need to know that what is going on here with us trying to adjust this is also not a result strictly of you having come here. This is an issue that I watched then Mayor Yusefian try to deal with, Councilman Weaver when he was mayor, Councilman Quintero when he was mayor, and now Mayor Najarian and their predecessors as well. If what you're doing helps bring some reformation of this process, boy, I certainly would appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And this will be on the agenda. I don't want to get into discussion. We're breaking our rules.
Not discussion, I just remember before any of you were on here, the average number of speakers or communication was somewhere between 3 and 5 per week. That was it.
Okay.
Not now.
The next speaker is Lori Collins for 3 minutes, followed by Leon Mayer.
I'm Lori Collins, and I'm here again tonight to ask this council to consider taking 2 actions, both of which have their genesis in a residential property known as 702 East Glen Oaks, which I believe you're all familiar with. The first request is that council abolish change of use variances. The owners of 702 East Glen Oaks filed for a change of use variance within days after the city filed criminal charges against them for violating the zoning code. The variance was denied, and the Crolians have not appealed to city council. They were able to avoid prosecution for the last 7 months because any action on the criminal complaint was effectively stayed by the filing of the application. The zoning administrator at the BZA hearing on 702 stated that she could not remember the last time the city granted a change of use variance. In general law cities, change in use variances have since 1970 been banned by the government code. Abolishing change of use variances should not wait for the completion of the zoning study by the planning department. The second request is that the city not agree to dismiss the criminal action filed against the Crolians without first requiring the Crolians to stipulate in a court order approved by the court and enforceable by the court that they and their family members will not use 702 for commercial purposes. The Crolians have said that they have purchased a commercial building, but my neighbors and I have little reason to believe that they will stop using 702 as a business. At the BZA hearing, Mr. Haru Crolian stated that they do not have customers visit the property. Yet one of the speakers testified on behalf of the Crolians that he is a customer and that he reviewed the building plans at 702. Without the threat of criminal sanctions, I have no doubt that the enforcement case at 702 will not close. And as you're aware, their son also recently started up 2 new businesses and listed 702 not just as the mailing address, but as the primary address for these businesses. Former council member Manukian, who without shame promoted the Crolians zone change application without disclosing at council the major fundraiser the Crolians hosted for him just 2 weeks before the first hearing on the zone change, made my neighbors and I work very hard to preserve our residential neighborhood. The very least the city can do now is to put an end to the commercial use at 702 once and for all. And on another matter, I'm chief counsel for the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, and at our hearings, we hold all of our public testimony at the beginning of the meeting for the convenience of the public. We allow 3 minutes for every member of the public and 5 minutes for someone who represents a group. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Leon Mayer, 3 minutes, followed by Barry Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council and staff. My name is Leon Mayer. I'm here on behalf of the Friends of the Library and the library itself, of course. And I want to look ahead just for a second, as we did last time. September 19th is the event after the event I'm going to tell you about tonight. September 19th comes within the Hispanic Heritage Month, and we're going to have an outstanding speaker and author for that event. The name of the book is The Search for a Civic Voice. The name of the author is Kenneth Burt, and he is the director of the California Federation of Teachers, an organization of 100,000 people. I'll tell you more about his background and particulars the next time I come here. That'll be September 19th, 7 o'clock. I think it's a Wednesday. A week from tomorrow night, we're going to have an outstanding program all about Armenia. And the two ladies who are going to be here is Kay Moradian and Silva Manugian. And these ladies are really fantastic people, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about them tonight, but I'm going to tell you about the subject matter first. We all know, and I've said it before, the oral tradition has provided the chain of continuity for Armenian culture, the Armenian people, for thousands of years, hundreds of years. And these ladies are great storytellers because of their background and experience and abilities. Kay Moradian is an author. She's written the book, A Gift in the Sunlight, an Armenian story, and this is a story inspired by her mother. Her mother, under, of course, adverse circumstances, was able to get out of Turkey and Armenia during the time of the genocide. And the mother came to this country, and Kay was born in Boston, educated in Boston University, UCLA, and she has been a retired professor from the LA community colleges, all of them, in the field of health and public education in that respect, health and etc. Now, she will be talking about her book. This is her first book. And the other lady we're going to have here is Silva Manugian. Now, Sylvia was famous before she was born, that is, her family, because her father, a gentleman by the name of Sahan Natalia, was born in 1884. I'll make this real quick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've got
and his
10.
Okay,
All
and
right.
She has a fantastic background about Armenian culture and history. Thank you. And that's a week from tomorrow, 8 o'clock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Barry Allen, 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council staff, and of course the public. I'm Barry Allen. Several things. Number one, of course, is the fact that this is not our First Amendment right. This is speaking to the council or any legislative body is controlled by the Ralph M. Brown Act. And I think that's one of the first things. Secondly, earlier today at the 9:30 meeting, one of our city councilmen spoke to the fact that people don't come to council meetings. Well, I think we've just found another reason. They want to stay home and get to bed early. And I think if you really look at the numbers, how many times has this council gone till 2:30 or till midnight or even till 10 o'clock in the last year? I think as you look at those issues, those things have to be considered as well. And this is a right of the people. And by the way, I do want to congratulate Mr. Starbird on the Quality of Life program that started in July for city employees to report issues within the city. I think it was very good. The only thing that I could suggest is that instead of reporting their findings on the city employee intranet, is that it should be placed on the website so the entire community can see the success of the programs and the type of issues that city employees are seeing. I think that would be an advantage. And I really do think that we need to encourage more people to come to this dais. As Mr. Weaver said today, well, nobody cares about the fire department. We don't see them here. And if we brought 50 people here, what would happen then? They would get a minute or two at the end of the program. I think that this is a chilling effect, has a chilling impact on the potential of people participating in the government. We're doing our best to get youth involvement. We need to have the same thing from the people sitting on this dais to encourage more people to come here and speak on the issues. That's imperative. I'm Barry Allen, Vanguard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. That was the last card that I had requesting priority. The remainder of the speakers are entitled to 5 minutes each. I'm going to shuffle these cards. And the first speaker is Nancy Kent for 5 minutes.
My name's Nancy Kent. I'm a resident of Glendale, and I would like to thank you, Mayor Najarian, for the oral communications procedure you started last week, which has already been explained again tonight. That change, plus the man, Mr. Bear, I believe his name is, who spoke during oral communications last week and again tonight, to calmly but forcefully complain about the time spent on oral communications, resulted in public comments that did last less than an hour last week, according to the people who were responsible for timing the first hour of oral communications. The gentleman who wrote a column in the Glendale News Press today about oral communications mentioned the principal business of the day didn't start at last week's meeting until 2 hours and 40 minutes after the beginning of the meeting. I wasn't timing anything last week, but if that gentleman would be willing to go back and listen to the DVD of the meeting, which seems like a cruel and unusual thing to suggest, he would see that the presentations last week took much more time than they usually do. I was sitting next to someone who had come to speak about the election item that finally came up at 10 p.m., and when presentations ended, I made a comment to her about how long it had lasted. Also, last week's agenda had an item on the consent calendar that wound up generating quite a bit of discussion. So those two things were part of that 2 hours and 40 minutes. I want oral communications. I want an oral communications period to remain near the beginning of the meeting, but since so many people speak and use the entire 5 minutes and sometimes ask for more time after their time is up, I applaud efforts that result in speakers tightening up their comments. And perhaps the time should be changed from 5 minutes to 3 minutes for everyone. My next point is, last week during the election reform agenda item, the timer went off before I said the last couple of sentences in my final point about that extremely wide-ranging agenda item. I was speaking of Pasadena's Taxpayer Protection Act, and I won't take time to explain the details of that legislation, but I did want to mention the wonderful work done by John Vandekamp as the chair of the Pasadena City Council's task force that was charged with revising Pasadena's Taxpayer Protection Act. And John Vandekamp's work resulted in excellent anti-conflict of interest legislation for Pasadena. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. The next speaker is Margaret Hammond, followed by Armand Gorgorian.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, staff, and audience out there and here too. Again, my name is Margaret Hammond. Okay, here's where I'm coming from. You know, when you were elected, most of the voters were under the impression that you would want to hear from the people who voted for you. And what other way do they have to communicate with you except to come here? And because I hear a lot from people who say, well, I phoned so-and-so, he never got back to me. I still haven't heard from him. They're talking about city council members, that they are trying to speak to you regarding problems that they have. So if they have no way to communicate, are we a locked-down city? Are the residents locked down with no access to be able to speak? I mean, do you want to hear from the public on very important quality of life issues or not? You often get information that you would otherwise not be aware of or not be given. Many times things have been brought to you that you were not aware of. And do we need a petition to hear from the public on this important issue of not free speech, but just communicating with our city council? Our neighbors. You're our neighbors and our friends. I mean, don't you listen to your neighbors and your friends and your family? I think this is something that when you start getting to the point where you're, knocking it down and down, not very good, really. But anyway, that's my opinion. As usual, I have my opinion. And I meet people. Today, I bet I was around town, Ross's, Staples. At least 10 people came up to me and said, we're really glad to hear you, Margaret. Otherwise, there are things that we would not listen or hear, and that I do speak up for a lot of people that come to me. And I understand the legal process to enforce that no commercial barbecuing be done in the city is in the city attorney's hands, and many of us are awaiting the decisions on those whatever processes. And also, this is a follow-up. There was no criticism by me of the employees of the city clerk's office. Read the city voting process. Many of those ladies I've known for 30 years in there. I have very good communication with them, very nice, decent ladies, and men, too. The criticism was of a candidate. I specified that, and how the process of getting the absentee ballots was arrived at. That was my criticism, not of the city clerk's office or of the people that were in it. I was talking of prior to being the city clerk. So I just want to make that clear. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Margaret. Armand Gorgorian, followed by Linda Lalayan.
Mr. Mayor, councilmen, staff, Armand Gorgorian, representing Humanitarian Glendale chapter. I have with me here some of our athletes that are going to represent City of Glendale in the 4th Pan-Armenian Games in Yerevan, Armenia. As you know, we've been here before, and our kids that went to Armenia have been very successful. This year, we are going to represent City of Glendale with more than 80 athletes and coaches in basketball, boys and girls, volleyball, boys and girls, and soccer. I'm going to introduce Mr. Armik Ebrahimian, which has been working very hard in organizing this event, and he will give you a little bit more information. Thank you.
Hello. Mayor Najarian, City Council members, my name is Armik Ebrahimian. I guess you know me. I've been involved with the Hominid Men for many years. As Armand mentioned, we've been preparing for last 7 months to take this group of athletes to represent City of Glendale and also Armenian community in Pan-Armenian Games held in Armenia. This year we doubled our participants. 4 years ago we took only 40 athletes, but this year we're taking 80 athletes and coaches. 4 years ago we were able to win the men's championship in basketball and came second in women's basketball, and we have high hopes to have a few championships, and will return with the results to the City Council, hopefully in a few months. The objective of this activity and trip is not only to create an opportunity for young Armenians around the world to see their homeland for the first time for many of them, but also compete at the high-level competitions. And more important, as we've been emphasizing to our athletes, to present City of Glendale and the community the best way possible on the court and off the court, since all the world has been will be watching these games through the TV coverages and press. So this is only a handful, as Armand mentioned, in those teams that we're participating. We also have some individual participants in table tennis, and also track and field. So total of 80 athletes and coaches. We're departing next week, and the games are held August 18 through 26th. So we'll be back end of August.
Congratulations, and let us know how you did. I know you did win the basketball competition. That was excellent. Mr. Quintero?
I want to wish you all good luck, and I know you'll bring home some championship trophies. But what I specifically want to do is recognize my former longtime employee, who is not a teenager, Eileen, and has two beautiful twins, a very hard-working young woman who's a real asset to all of Glendale. Good to see you again.
We would also like to present some memorables that we prepared to take to Armenia. It's a T-shirt with the logo to council members and staff, as well as some keychain, same with the logo prepared that we're taking as memorables to Armenia.
Hey, Armic.
Yes.
I think we should.
All of those guys.
You want to ask them?
I mean, you look short.
I just manage them. I don't play.
That's all you guys. Six. Oh, jeez.
Okay, great. We have some pins for you, City of Glendale pins you can take, and I know athletes like to trade them and collect them, so I know you'll do the City of Glendale very proud. Thank you very much.
Got to give them a stack or two.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
Got to give them a stack so they can trade for a lot of different ones.
I need to do that or table tennis.
We have considered your sizes, so there's a good size for each one of you.
What'd you say?
We have extra large to medium. I think medium is for
There's a
you.
medium. Linda Lalayan. Linda is followed by Dr. Richard Espiritu.
Good evening. My name is Linda Lalayan, and I'm here today just to make some comments on the articles, few articles that were written by Glendale News Press, and some of the comments that Glendale Unified School District officials made. One was by, I don't know if he's a doctor, or Mr. Sheehan, which commented that the school district is bending backwards to be good neighbors. I wish that was true. If that was the case, we wouldn't be here week after week. So we, actually, Mr. Quintero is not here, but I want to thank Mr. Quintero for inviting us to the meeting that we're going to have next Tuesday. We look forward to that. And Mr. Zern, thank you for sending the list of people that, we were there on May 10th at the meeting. We're working on that, and we're going to have some more people come. A couple of other comments that were made by Mr. Krikorian that, he commented that he said something like, we cannot shut down operation. We moved the school. These are real gross exaggerations. We are not asking for the school to be shut down. We're not asking for the school to move. That's impossible. And these exaggerations really ignite emotions in some people who have children that go to the school, and it just gives them a different, how can I say, viewpoint. We're not asking for, I think you all know that what we're asking for. Ms. Bogart, I think it is it Bogart?
Boger, Mary Boger.
Ms. Boger, she made a comment about, which, several people are very upset about. I really regret that they didn't have a realistic idea of what living next to a school entails when they moved into the area. I really think that ignites, again, negative emotions. I think it's much more positive to look for solutions and solve problems, which I'm sure that the school district and the board members are very capable people and they can do that. I do hope that the 14th meeting with the council members and the school board will be fruitful, and we will not have the school district really being evasive and trying to, avoid really solving our problems. A couple of things that, now that I have a little bit of time, I like to mention here. There are activities in the school during 4 seasons, 7 days a week. Sunday activity with people practicing in the field and running on the bleachers during weekends when we need our rest to refresh for the following weekend. Glendale High School is the only school that has its gates wide open 7 days a week, 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. We get absolutely no rest. The cumulative impact of the new field is not just with the increased football, soccer, and track and field. It is with ongoing practice and the public practicing on the field. There has to be a schedule also for the public usage. The field should not be open 7 to 11 every day. That's absurd, and I think other schools don't do that either. As I said last time, there are 19 games scheduled this season. Some of these games will be played on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, all during the same weekend, and that's 3 weekends that the schedule is going to happen, from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. What are we supposed to do? Leave our homes for 3 days? In 2005 and prior years, there were 1 afternoon games and 1 evening game, which we put up with. Since the new field at Moise, the number of football games have dramatically increased as other activities I mentioned before, hardly shutting down the activities. Why not put bleachers in other schools so the games are divided between the schools, or make it a priority to isolate the field from the residential area with a soundproof wall and trees along Campus Street? There's a wall going up along Monterey near Glendale Avenue, and I think that either the school district, along with, in collaboration with the city, I think the same should be done, for our neighborhood, to isolate the field, the stadium that, all those games and all the activities are happening from the residential area. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Dr. Richard Espiritu, followed by Bonnie Adams.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, and staff. I am Dr. Richard Espiritu. Mr. Kasaki, could you... Last week, I gave you my report of the sidewalk monitor. This is my report of this week. Last week, I entitled this ADA Class 101. This week, I am going to ask, I'm entitled this, are you smarter than a fifth grader? Next picture. This is on the corner of Glen Oaks and Pacific, the southwest corner. On that building, it says it's a physical therapy and occupational center. What type of people go there? People who need medical service, other than the ones who work there. This is looking west on Glen Oaks, and you can see there are 3 tree wells there. The first tree well is approximately 4 inches deep, right adjacent to the ramp going into the building. The third ramp is approximately 2.5 to 3 inches deep. Next slide. This is on the corner of Brand and Dryden. Gentleman there is amputee. He had to go up to Stocker and Brand because he couldn't negotiate between the trees, the trash bins, the benches to get over to where he needed to get to. Question, Mr. Mayor, are you aware of this particular problem due to the fact that you have property just a mile and a half north of that location? Next picture. This is the U.S. Post Office on just north of Glen Oaks on Pacific. You can see there's a guy wire. And there's no actual shields. Next picture. There are literally hundreds of people who use this post office every day. Mr. Howard, is this example of Barden versus Sacramento? Next picture. This is on the corner of Glen Oaks and Kenilworth. This is the MTA Route 92. It's also the new stop for the route number 7. There's approximately 2 feet from the bench to the street. There is no space between the benches and the trees. Next picture. There is approximately 30 inches from the tree well to the AT&T box, and 3 inches from the tree to the bench. And just beyond the AT&T box is the driveway. You go into the Maui Howie and the rest of the Yum Yum Donuts. I don't think a bus can stop over there. Mr. Mayor, you are a member of the MTA board. Do you ever drive Glen Oaks Boulevard? See these problems? There are a number of MTA bus stops that will soon be the Glendale Beeline bus route number 7, that are even more disastrous than the one that I am showing you. And would you like me, at some point in time in the future, Mr. Mayor, since this is an MTA, maybe a Beeline issue, would you like me to take these pictures to the MTA board? Be more than happy to go downtown and present it to the MTA board. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
You're more than welcome to come to the MTA board, but they only give you 1 minute to speak, so I'm not sure this will work.
I'll make sure.
Mr. Yusefian.
I haven't said a lot of things, but the picture, Mr. Spiritu, the picture you showed that the bench was right against the tree. Is the other side the same? Because it looked like the first.
Both sides.
So what you're saying is there's no way for someone to basically go around to sit on the bench because you actually have to hop over it.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Besides which, with the buses with the wheelchair lift, they extend approximately 5 feet out from the bus. There's no way that a person in a wheelchair can even
get on it.
Get on it.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Bonnie Adams.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Adams, resident of Glendale. I have a couple of issues. First of all, I want to say that I strongly disagree with Mr. Bear. I am very much in agreement with Barry and Margaret. I think this is the time when we have a chance to talk to the city council, and we're limited as it is to 3 to 5 minutes or whatever. There's a lot of frustrated people out here. And this is one of the first times I've seen in this chamber, since I've been coming to these council meetings, such a small crowd. Most of the time, this chamber is practically full. There are, whatever reason they're here, everybody must be on vacation right now. That's okay, but it's a small crowd this week. That's okay. So I think free speech is free speech, and I think that by putting us in that kind of a compromising position of having just like one minute to speak or 2 minutes to speak is isn't fair. Now, the second issue is I have I'd like to thank the governor's office. That's the governor's office for getting me through a month and a half of horrible red tape to get an AccuCheck, because I've just been diagnosed with diabetes, I think, and I needed a specific type of AccuCheck, which will talk to me. So it took me a month, almost a month and a half, but I got somebody from the governor's office, a staff member, and he went around the mulberry bush instead of around Robin Hood's barn to cut through some red tape, and I was able to pick it up this morning. So I'm very grateful to the governor's office for that. Now, the other thing, this is very unpleasant, and it's nothing personal against anybody or this particular gentleman, but I am requesting that Mike Wiedeker be recalled from his position of ADA coordinator. He is not able, because of distance or whatever, to come to the meetings. He should be overseeing these things on the buses that aren't being done. He should be overseeing all of this ADA stuff that hasn't been done, that it's being done. He should be overseeing it. He was named by Mr. Starbird. You didn't make a bad choice, Mr. Starbird. You just made a wrong choice. You were in such a hurry to get somebody in that position who knew Title 24. He's not the only one that knows Title 24. You should post that job, look at resumes, interview people. That ADA coordinator job is just as important job as any other job in this city, because that ADA coordinator is responsible for a lot of things. And that ADA has to be overseen, and Title 24, which goes along with it, because it is the state regs, which are a lot stricter, actually, have to be overseen by somebody. That's a full-time job now. Now, Mr. Wiedeker hasn't even left Mr. Tom's office yet, that I know of. He's not even over at administration yet, that I know of. You need to find somebody that will take the responsibility, and he is a nice gentleman, so it's nothing personal, Mr. Wiedeker. I know he's a very nice gentleman. I like him, but he's not the right person for this job. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. That concludes oral communications. Next item, please.
Next item, action items number 8, is Director of Public Works regarding schedule for sewer system management plan for the city of Glendale. At 8A1 is resolution approving the schedule for sewer system management plan.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Council members Draymond?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Yusefian?
Aye.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes. Next item.
At 9 is hearings, and 9A is Director of Planning, continued from 7/10/07, regarding appeal of standards variance, case number PVAR 2006-035, located at 3615 Burritt Way. Public hearing was closed. At 9A1 is motion denying standards variance with findings. At 9A2 is motion continuing the matter to prepare findings in support of approving the standards variance.
Thank you. And as way of background, when we last left this item approximately 3 weeks ago, Mr. Weaver was in Hawaii, I take it?
Aloha Land.
We only had 4 councilmen. We took evidence, testimony from both sides, and the public hearing was opened and then closed. With the indication that there was not going to be a majority vote amongst the 4 of us, it was moved to be continued until this date certain, where the council could pick up its deliberations and hopefully come to a resolution on the matter. Is there anything else that needs to be said with regard to our background and history? I don't think Mr. Hassan Harani needs to do a report.
No, I don't.
At this point.
No.
So I'm going to open it up to my colleagues for deliberation.
Mayor?
Mr. Yusefian?
I just have a question from Mr. Weaver. Mr. Weaver, did you have an opportunity to watch the tape?
Watched 4 hours of tape and then spent approximately 20 hours researching.
Thank you very much. So
Yes.
you are well aware of all the facts and issues?
Everything.
Thank you.
Mr. Garcia.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Just for clarification, Mr. Weaver, when you said researching, it was reviewing the record that was in the matter before
Right.
the council. That's
What
correct.
I already had to work with, what everybody else had.
Okay, so we can open it up for discussion. If not, someone can make a motion.
Well, let me say my piece.
Mr. Weaver.
I wrote this one down because, as I said, I spent about 20 hours preparing for this. So it's one of the rare ones I read. And I'd like to start up by saying I did not watch this in Hawaii. You were wondering if after our communication and I went to dinner, I came back and watched it. I did not. But I did tell my family I was praying it was not a 2-2 vote, so I would have to come back and do what I've just done. The upside of being gone was that all the notoriety being created really compelled me to spend a lot more time researching this than I ordinarily would. But I want to make sure that I had all the facts because it was pretty obvious where the four of you stood on the issue. I knew nothing about it. I didn't even know where Bert was until I started reading all this. But what I believe we are here for tonight is to determine if we can make the four findings necessary to grant a variance. And I'd like to go over the chronological time frame as I've been able to figure it out. The house was built in November 1957. That's when the permit was pulled. The Cabana permit was issued in November 63. Our inspector was called to inspect the foundation to see if it was ready to be poured. That inspection was to ascertain the width and depth of the trench and the placement of the rebar. The foundation had been prepared in conformance with the plans the city had that show the foundation to be 3 feet away from the neighbor's property line. Somewhere between February 64 and June 65, not only was the cabana completed, but it had been extended to and over the property line of the neighbor. Meetings with the city building and safety department did not reach an agreement to remedy the noncompliance. A city attorney's office became involved after building and safety referred the case to them for noncompliance. February 67, a hearing was held with the city attorney's office and building and safety. An agreement was reached that the owner would make the corrections to comply with our codes. In April 67, a permit was issued for that purpose. In early 68, the city attorney assigned to this case was in Mexico and mysteriously died. It was suspicious. I want to say, at this point, I don't want to make any excuses for what happened next. However, one should realize that there was a lot of shock in the city and the city attorney's office when this tragic event occurred. Also, at that time, there were only 4 city attorneys in the office, well, 1 city attorney and 3 others, unlike the 14 we have today. It was a much smaller office and busy. After this tragic loss, there was no further follow-up on the noncompliance issue. The ball was dropped, buried, overlooked, whatever. Could be understandable. It's not the first time that kind of thing has happened. Now fast forward to August 1989 when the Duttons purchased the property. They noticed that cabana was enclosed. According to Webster's 9th New Collegiate Dictionary, I got the right dictionary, unlike you. A cabana is a shelter resembling a cabin, usually with an open side facing a beach or swimming pool. An open side. But they noticed it was closed. The Duttons were suspicious of the electrical wiring, but they also found the house was like a fixer-upper and would require a good deal of work. They noticed that the cabana was not structurally contiguous with the original house. In other words, it had a tar paper roof and no air conditioning. However, regardless of their thinking on these matters, they bought it as is at a good price. Over time, they converted the cabana into their family room with no permits. They admit to that. They appear to have demolished the interior walls, insulated the walls, placed drywall on the inside of the cabana, carpeted the room over the tile floor, replaced 3 windows, replaced a door, performed electrical work, installed ceiling fans, and installed oak cabinets on the wall facing the neighbor. At no time does it appear that the Duttons checked with the city on the cabana construction or the need for permits for modifications. Now let me say right here and now, I believe that countless residents of this city and other cities buy homes having not done due diligence and making improvements without the proper permits. Many people just don't know all the rules and how to deal with these issues. So I am not going to condemn the Duttons or try to perceive what their thinking process was during this period. Moving along, an anonymous complaint was received by the city in 2000, which led to a code compliance investigation. As a result of this action, it was discovered the cabana was not legal. The March 2000 survey showed that almost the entire length of the retaining wall on the west side of the Duttons property was constructed on the neighbor's property, varying anywhere from 0.45 feet to 0.5 feet over the property line. The survey also showed that the house was abutting the retaining wall. Photos seem to indicate that the house is sitting on top of the wall, and I can't tell which it is. It further indicates that the section of the retaining wall where the cabana is located is 4 inches wide. The remaining portion of the wall is 6 inches wide. These are all on the survey. Questions from me on the wall are, 1, where are the permit and design drawings for the retaining wall? 2, since rainwater has been descending the slope of the neighbor's bank for a long time, how is it being captured and carried off to the street? You're not allowed to let water on your property drain onto somebody else's property. That's illegal. Does the retaining wall have perforated pipe to collect the water? Or does it have weep holes at the bottom to carry off the water? I have no idea. If it has neither, a good deal of moisture will accumulate behind the west wall where the oak cabinets will hide the dry rot that will most likely occur over time. Survey also indicates the difference in height between the neighbor's pad and the top of the retaining wall averages anywhere from 2 to 5 feet. Photos that have been provided to us show different conditions, some with a chain link fence sitting on top of the retaining wall. Others show it on a slope. Some photos show it standing straight up. Others show the fence leaning. Some photos show a hedge, and others do not. It seems all the photos taken were taken over a period of time, and I don't know which ones are the current ones. The fence is also shown with some ivy growing on the fence, and other showing no ivy on the fence or on the bank at all. What is the current condition? Well, when I look, there is no ivy on the street side of the fence. The Duttons said they had an agreement with the neighbor about them building the fence. The neighbor says no. I know that I would never allow someone to build a fence up to my house, so I have no access around the side of the house. So what about fire access? Back on sequence of events. Following the knowledge obtained by the Duttons after the survey, they then tried to obtain a vested right for the location of the cabana, but it was denied due to the permit having expired years before. They then tried to encourage their neighbor to give them the land between their 2 houses through an easement process that would legalize the cabana where it is located. It should be noted that the current code requires a 6-foot side yard setback from the property line. Prior to May 1991, the setback was 4 feet. In other words, the structures had to be at least 8 feet apart for houses built prior to 1991. Therefore, if a structure like the cabana takes up the entire 4 feet, plus a little more, as in this case, less than 4 feet of separation remains. The neighbor is currently entitled to add onto her home on the east side. She currently is approximately 8 feet from the Duttons' cabana and can legally add 4 onto her house. However, if she did that, the separation between would be less than 4 feet. This addition would be contrary to the objectives of the interior setback regulations. So the neighbor objected, and a lawsuit was filed by the Duttons in order to preclude them from having to cut 4 foot off the cabana. On March 14, 2002, the lawsuit was initiated. The city was not a party to the lawsuit and therefore was not in a position to plead the city's position on the merits of the lawsuit. On January 23, 2004, the Superior Court judge ruled in favor of the Duttons, giving them the property under which the cabana sat. This meant the Duttons received about 4/10 of a foot of the neighbor's property. The court also gave them an easement over 3 feet of the neighbor's property, precluding her from ever putting a walkway or anything else on the east side of her house. And incomprehensibly, he stated in his decision paper that both parties are victims of the ineptness of the city of Glendale. I believe that comment is simply wrong to have been included in the statement of decision. The judge had no basis on which to reflect in making that comment. He drew a conclusion with no factual record produced during the trial. The court's conclusion that because the city did not follow through and correct the deficiency, that it should be okay to stay is simply wrong. However, our codes still give us full authority to expect compliance on building matters regardless of what a court rules on the property rights. On appeal, the Second Appellate District Court reversed the lower court's decision on the easement request over the neighbor's property that the Duttons wanted, but left the property under the cabana in the Duttons' possession. So here we are, years later, trying to decide if we can make the 4 findings to grant a variance and make the cabana compliant with city codes. Now, everything I've set up to here is simply background information and has absolutely nothing to do with making the findings. Nothing. Findings are supposed to be difficult to make by their very nature. They're only to be made in rare, unique situations for different reasons. They are in regard to the lay of the land and having absolutely nothing to do with the economics of the situation. The first finding is whether the strict application would result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship. The practical difficulties are not there. The Duttons lot is larger than all the other lots around and has almost 40 feet additional frontage on which to build. Furthermore, a review of the floor area ratio for that lot indicates the Duttons' house could legally be doubled in size with a second floor. The zoning in this area permits a second floor addition. 1 or more of the existing bedrooms in the first floor could be converted into the family room and the bedrooms moved upstairs. In this case, the cabana could be converted into a real cabana, would open onto the pool area, and be in total compliance with our codes. The second finding has to do with exceptional circumstances and conditions that do not apply to other properties in the neighborhood. That is not true. There is nothing exceptional about the Duttons lot in terms of dealing with the house structure itself. The third finding asks if the variance will be material detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property in the neighborhood. Well, it absolutely is injurious to the neighbor's property, for she will be precluded from even constructing a walkway on the east side of her house. Further, that restraint would run with the land and affect any future owner of the house. If they did due diligence, they would note that fact and possibly not purchase the house. The fourth finding questions whether the variance will be contrary to the objective of the ordinance. Of course it will. The city changed the code to create a 12-foot separation between homes in 1991. To go the other way in this case would be contrary to the intent of the current city code regardless of the separation between other homes in the area. The public has weighed in on this many times of the need to create adequate space between homes. If you have any doubt, just look at Oakmont 4, which led to the creation of the Hillside Ordinance. Having said all that, you know where I'm at by now, and I'm ready to make a motion to deny the appeal to the Duttons.
Are you making a motion?
I'd like to move 9A1.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Have a question? Would that be discussion?
That would be permitted, of course. Mr. Draymond.
I'm just curious about the fellow who died mysteriously in Mexico.
Yeah. The record's silent on that.
Well, not only it's so silent, it didn't exist in the hearing. So I'm curious where it came from.
It's in the record. I read it. I didn't make it up.
I didn't say you made it up, Mr. Weaver.
Yeah, it's in the record.
I'm asking the city attorney about it because it was mentioned tangentially prior to the hearing to me about, I wonder what that was all about. And there was some rumor that someone had perhaps died, perhaps in a car accident and so on. but it wasn't presented at the hearing. That's why I'm asking.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Mr. Draymond, I believe the reference to the person in the city attorney's office who passed mysteriously is referenced in the letter that was submitted by Mr. Wright, counsel for Mrs. Boyer, that he had discovered that during the litigation between the Boyers and the Duttons, and he did reference that in his letter, so that is part of the record before you.
It just wasn't presented
It wasn't
orally.
presented orally, that's correct, but it is part of your written record.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further discussions, we have a motion at 9A1, which is denying the standards variance. Roll call, please.
Council members Draymond.
So it's a motion to deny the variance. So if you want to give them the variance, you need to say no.
Yeah. So my vote is no.
Councilmember Quintero.
No.
Weaver.
Aye.
Yusefian.
Aye.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes. What's next, please?
Is there any new business?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Yusefian.
I would like to move that the city attorney be and hereby is authorized to enter into a retainer agreement to utilize the legal services of Jackson and Lewis et Zappia to represent the interest of the appointing authority before the Civil Service Commission in a personnel matter and to incur all necessary expenses in connection herewith. The agreement shall, in addition to other provisions, contain a fee cap for the handling of the said matter.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Council members Draymond.
Yes.
Quintero.
Yes.
Weaver.
Aye.
Yusefian.
Aye.
Mayor Najarian.
Yes.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
In the memory of Mr. Erwin Krikorian.
So moved.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.